In this video, I want to explore the difference between functions and objects. At the same time, we'll learn a little about how PHP handles dates and time. This is the documentation for the PHP date function in the online manual. As it explains at the top of the page, it formats a local date or time, and in the description we can see that the first argument to the date function is a format string. The second argument is optional, but the default is to call another function which is called time. This returns a timestamp for the current date and time. Timestamps measure the number of seconds that have elapsed since midnight Universal Coordinated Time at the beginning of January the 1st, 1970. And that's how computers work with dates and time. They always work in seconds. And if we scroll down, there's a list of the format characters that can be used in the first argument to the date function. So for example, a lowercase l gives you a full textual representation of the day of the week in English, Sunday through Saturday. So let's try that out. I'm going to switch to my editing program, and I've got a blank page here. I'm simply going to echo date and then pass it a format string. The format string can also contain other characters. So I'm going to have lowercase l, comma, space, uppercase F, lowercase j, another comma, and an uppercase Y. And although that looks terribly mysterious, if we save that and load it into a browser, you now know the date on which I recorded this video. Of course, when you run the same script, it will show the current date for you. Now, if I want to find out which day of the week Christmas falls on in 2016, I need to use another function to create a timestamp for that date. So let's go back to the editing program. I'm going to add in an extra line at the top here. I'm going to capture that timestamp as Christmas 2016. And there are several functions that are capable of creating a timestamp. I'm going to use string to time, which converts most English date formats to a timestamp. So str to time, then a string, dec 25 2016. That will give me the timestamp, which I can now pass as the second argument to the date function. So if we save that and reload the browser, we now know that Christmas in 2016 is a Sunday. To find that out, we needed to use two different functions, date and string to time. Let's see how that compares with the datetime class. I've got the datetime class documentation here, and at the top it says that it is a representation of date and time. So unlike the date function, it's not just for formatting a date. And if we scroll down, we see that the class has a large number of constants. It's also got many methods. This one here, the add method, can be used to calculate a new date by adding a specific date interval. The set time zone method can change the time zone of the datetime object. Unlike the date function, which deals only with the local date or time, the datetime class is aware of different time zones, and the format method can be used to display the date or time. So let's use the datetime class. Let's go back to the editing program, and I'm going to comment out these two lines and then create an instance of the class. I'm going to call it date1. Then we need the new keyword and datetime. And if I don't pass any arguments to it, that will give me a datetime object for the current date and time according to the server's time zone. So I'm just going to duplicate that and have another one as date2. So they've both got the same date and time, but they're completely independent of each other. So let's change the time zone for one of them. To change the time zone, you first need to create a date time zone object. Let's set it to the west coast of the United States, where lynda.com has its headquarters. So I'll call it West Coast. Then the new operator and date time zone. And we need to pass that as an argument, a string of a time zone identifier. For the west coast of the United States, it's America / Los underscore Angeles. And we can now set date 2 to the west coast of the United States. So date 2, the arrow operator, set time zone, and then we pass it our date time zone object, west coast. So let's see the time difference between where I am in London and the folks at lynda.com in sunny California. So echo and then date 1 for me, and use the format method. And this takes as its argument exactly the same formatting characters as the date function. I'm going to add in the time, so lowercase g, colon, lowercase ia, then a comma, and then the rest of the format will be the same as before. Then duplicate that line and set the second one to date 2. So if I save that and then load it into a browser, it's 6:35 p.m. where I am in London, but it's only 10:35 a.m. in California at lynda.com. So it's early evening for me and mid-morning for them. Using PHP objects is very similar to working with ordinary functions and variables. The main difference is that a function is capable of performing only a single task. When you create an object from a class, the object has access to all of the class's methods. Many objects can also store values as properties. You create an instance of a class, in other words an object, with the new keyword, as I've done here, so new date time and new date time zone, and you store the object in an ordinary variable. Once created, the object accesses its methods and properties using the arrow operator, so that's a hyphen followed immediately by an angle bracket or a greater than symbol. It's time to put your PHP skills to the test again with another challenge. The task is to create a custom function to display a copyright date. When a website is new, the copyright notice will display the copyright symbol and only the current year. But each time that January rolls along, it's normal to display a range of years indicating both the start year and the current year. To solve this challenge, automate this process with a custom function. You've already seen in this chapter how to define a function, and we've also taken a brief look at how PHP handles dates, so you should have everything you need. Think about whether the function should take any arguments. If so, what? Also think about how to get the current year. Do you want it as a 4-digit number or as 2? The PHP online documentation for the date function at this URL might help you with the solution. I estimate this challenge should take you 10 to 15 minutes. In the next video, I'll show you my solution. How did you get on? The challenge was to create a custom function that returns a string consisting of the copyright symbol and the current year, or a range of years from a start year to the current year. This is how I did it. Create a custom function, we need to start with the function keyword. Then I'm going to prefix my function name with lyn underscore, prevent any possible clashes with existing functions, and then call it copyright. We need to return a range of years if the start year is different from the current one. So we need to pass it the start year as an argument. So I'm going to call that start year. And then inside the body of the function, the first thing we need to do is to get the current year. So we'll save that as current year. And we can use the date function with a single string of an uppercase Y. And that will give us the current year as a 4-digit number. There's no need to use a date time object in this case. It involves more code, and all we're interested in is getting the current year as a 4-digit number. We're not going to be doing anything else with this date. So we need to find out if the start year is less than the current year. So that calls for a conditional statement. If start year is less than current year, In that case, we will need to return a range of dates. And let's have the current year this time just as a 2-digit number. So we'll reassign the value to current year, again using date. And if you looked at the online documentation, you'll have seen that a lowercase y gives you the year as a 2-digit number. So now we need to return our string. It'll be a double quoted string. We'll start off with the copyright symbol. That's the HTML entities there. And then we'll have the start year. That'll be followed immediately by an n dash, the HTML entity for an n dash, and the value of current year. Notice that I've not put any space on either side of n dash. That's because an ampersand can't be part of a variable name. So PHP knows immediately that this is going to be literal text. And with the second variable here, we don't have a backslash in front of that $sign, so PHP knows that if we're in a double quoted string, it must be the value of that variable that we want to display. So that has dealt with the range of years. If start year is not less than the current year, we need an else block. And inside there we simply return, again, a double quoted string. The first item in there is the copyright symbol, and then simply the value of start year. And that is all we need to do. So let's just test that. So we'll use our lin copyright function. I'm recording this video in 2015, so let's use that as the start year. Save that and load the page into the browser, and it displays copyright 2015. Let's say we're doing it in a different year. We want a range of years, say 2010 as the start year. Save that and refresh in the browser. Then we get the range of 2010 to 2015. And if you put in a year that is in the future, let's say we put in 2030, obviously that's not going to be less than the start year. So if we save that and load it into the browser, we just get copyright 2030. So everything is working fine. And that was my solution to creating a custom copyright function.